Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Summers McKay.
And I'm Kristy Jansen, and we are part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to help us all get focused on what's going right in the world.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy, taking care of your houseplants-worthy podcast. Today is Friday, the 28th of January, 2022. I'm super hyper this morning, Kristy.
Too much caffeine?
Okay, so a combo. Too much caffeine, but also the unbelievable delight of gardening. I gardened indoor and outdoor this morning because, as you know, I've had to move many of my normally outdoor potted plants into my indoor home, which has become basically like a arboretum of greenhouseness. But I also have some really lovely plants that are too big to bring in that have suffered greatly during the cold weather, right? They were very accustomed to California weather. And so I have a couple ficus trees that are 20 years old that I grew from itty bitty tiny little plants, as well as, some other tropical plants that have just grown. So I actually did some research and I looked into what I could do to help them get through the winter without having to bring them all the way inside. And so I spent this morning outside trimming and pruning, and it was just cold enough that it felt brisk, but it was warm enough to be out there. I feel like I've gotten back to nature, and I needed it this week. So, yeah.
I'm so glad that you did that. I thought maybe you were using your coffee grounds in your garden, and that's what made you be extra like caffeinated. It penetrated your skin.
I do have a place where I dump all of my coffee grounds. It's this little area that I'm going to develop into a fairy garden for Brennan. And since we've lived here now almost, 8 months, I've just dumped coffee and tea grounds out there. And it is really, really flourishing. Although local, it's just growing like crazy. So I don't know. I know it's only January 28th, but I feel like we're knocking on the door of spring. We're knocking on the door of my birthday month. It's good. So I'm in a good mood. How are you today?
I feel a little bit less jazzed, but really positive today. I woke up this morning with a sense of expansiveness, which that was one of my gratitude journal entry items. I was grateful to feel that sense of expansive
I like
energy.
That. Right.
Because I don't always have that. And it just was really nice to appreciate it and acknowledge it and carry that into my day.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I think the world right now can be expansive. I know at the Optimist Daily, we love what we're doing and we're expanding like crazy. You and I sent an email out to our audience a couple days ago, just celebrating some of the crazy achievements our business has had. Over 1 million hits in January, just skyrocketing listenership. It's really fun that the world is catching on the optimist wave and that you and I keep getting to tell these stories.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's that big of a surprise when you look at the alternatives.
Yeah.
I think we all need a little break. We all need that connection to what's going right. And that's what I like about doing this podcast with you every morning, Summers.
Exactly.
It reminds us what's about cool stuff that's happening. So
right.
Do you want to talk about your story first?
I'd be happy to. Haha. Somebody is going to write in about my puns, my dad joke puns. But yes, I will absolutely talk about it. It is sort of aligned with what I got to spend my morning doing because it's about pollinators. My headline reads, Brighton passes buzzworthy law requiring bee bricks. Now, what is a bee brick and why do we need them? The city of Brighton and Hove in England have introduced a new planning law worthy of buzzing about. The law requires new buildings to include special bricks that have little nests for solitary bees. Now, first things first, what's a solitary bee? Most bees are not actually honeybees. Most bees are actually solitary bees, and solitary bees are incredibly powerful pollinators. They don't live in a colony, they don't have a queen, they don't make honey, and they're actually even more effective at pollinating because they don't carry pollen in what's known as a pollen basket, which means everywhere they take off and everywhere they land, they're distributing pollen. It's really important that these bees have somewhere to live. Now, Brighton and Hove's council policy specifies that all new buildings over 5 meters tall should have bee bricks and bird nesting boxes that are suitable for swifts, a bird species that is experiencing a grave decline in population. The special bee bricks are the same size as conventional bricks, but integrate a series of narrow openings that resemble spaces where solitary bees are known to nest. According to the company Green and Blue, a company that makes bee bricks, these bricks are recreating an existing type of nest that is popular with solitary bees. Solitary bees nest in crumbling mortar and old brickwork, but modern buildings are too perfect and there's nowhere for them to be. Now, Kristy, you have some experience with bees in your walls, don't you?
I do. Yeah, we had a full hive living in our walls for I don't know how long until we discovered them, but we had to have them professionally removed through being smoked. They got relocated, and we got a nice jar of honey out of that whole transaction. So I know that bees live in buildings.
Yes.
The bees that we had living with us were definitely not solitary.
Right.
there was like tens of thousands of them, so I'm sure they weren't solitary. But I did not know that about solitary bees. That's really an interesting little bit of information, and it makes sense.
Exactly. And this talks about what you love to talk about, which is that coexistence of humanity, infrastructure, and the animal kingdom, right? Because these habitats have actually occurred naturally for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, because as long as we've had buildings, buildings have crumbled and bees have had somewhere to be. Now, enough with the bee pun, Summers. I'm even boring myself.
Well, the thing that's interesting is that I understand that part of the concern is that these can be considered pests as well. I know that birds are often considered pests. There's a whole city in New Jersey or somewhere that is dealing with overpopulation of crows right now, and they're trying to figure out how to not have them roost
the crows
all downtown, But how are they dealing with that in this case?
Well, it's really about a balance, right? It's about a balance of not just prioritizing one pollinator, also looking at increased planting, hedgehog holes, swift boxes, bird feeders, all other examples of inexpensive ideas that lead to increased biodiversity, right? So biodiversity is the goal. It's not just giving, space just to the bees, but recognizing this is one in a series of efforts. And then that is creating the balance.
And it's sort of making friends with nature, inviting it into our dwellings and our live spaces. And that's kind of takes down the wall between human and nature, which is something that I feel is really overdue. It's a mistake anyway. It's a made up artificial boundary because we're all full of microbes in our bodies. If we didn't have our gut bacteria, we would not be able to survive.
Yeah. That, you guys all know I'm obsessed with my bird feeders. I actually have my squirrel feeders. I love being in nature. And I think that understanding that we all just play a role in the general ecosystem as opposed to the separation of us and them. And, we had armadillos rooting in our front yard, and my husband expressed that he was going to, try to get rid of them. And I was like, well, actually, no, armadillos are very effective at pest management. We want them rooting in our front yard. All of these creatures, and even though armadillos are kind of weird and creepy looking, all of these creatures play a really beneficial role. And I love that, acknowledging that if you have a proper place for bees, if their habitat is available, if they're in an ecosystem, they are less likely to get out of balance and become a pest. So New Jersey and crows, maybe New Jersey should introduce some hawk feeders and they'll handle the crows.
Speaking of making friends with nature, I have an article which kind of talks about this and looking to nature for solutions to making human life better. The headline reads, "This could be the start of the end for drug-resistant bacteria." I know we don't have enough to worry about, but when other headlines aren't raging that I see sometimes, the headlines always like to worry the pants off of us. But is to talk about drug-resistant bacteria and the idea that our incredible advances using antibiotics to cure infectious disease, it's a really amazing thing that we've been able to accomplish over the last 60, 70 years whenever they discovered how effective penicillin can be in treating infections. But due to overuse and misuse and other reasons, there's a lot of bacterias which are resistant to antibiotics now. And this can prevent from using it as a healing modality. So it can be a huge obstacle. It can block the ability to do open surgeries for things, Anyway, one of the new modalities that they've been experimenting with, which is actually not super new because even though the West really went all in for antibiotics, the Eastern European countries and Russia they continued to research something called bacteriophages as a treatment for bacterial infections. And what bacteriophages is they are basically a bug that infects bacteria and kills them. So basically it eats bacteria. It's a virus that infects bacteria. And this is something we reported on last year, how researchers were able to use bacteriophages, which are viruses that infect bacteria, to fight, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And there is a new study which has just come out, which focused on a woman who was suffering from persistent Klebsiella pneumonia, which was cured using this new biotechnology or this rediscovered, let's say. It's not completely new, but there's been advances in this field over the last couple decades. The bacteria in the case of this woman was very hard to treat because it was both drug resistance and also it had created like a film over the infected area, which made it very hard for the drugs
to even get there.
Reach. Yeah.
So it became encapsulated.
Exactly. So according to a report published in Nature Communications, it described how the use of bacteriophages over a 3-year period finally freed the woman of her infection, and it also gave her the ability to walk again because a wound she had suffered in a terrorist bombing attack. And that led to some of the bone in her leg needing to be surgically removed, and the infection got in there, and it made her not able to walk until they were able to cure that with using bacteriophages. A research group at Elavia Institute in Georgia, Georgia, which is an Eastern European country, had bioengineered and prepared the perfect bacteriophage to use in this particular woman's infection. And it was effective. And it's just an interesting opportunity to explore a different modality that uses something in nature to cure a human infection. So
I love this story. I love the idea of sort of recognizing that old knowledge and new knowledge can come together. And I also think you're really smart for making the choice to talk about bacteriophages when I was talking about bee bricks.
Hey, these are super important solutions that are out in the world and it's fun to read about. So other things today on the Optimist Daily include a headline that reads guaranteed income for poor mothers boosts infant brain activity. So UBI, it helps all the different generations. You can start a weekly fitness journal to help maintain motivation. Now that it's January, we're almost done with January. If you want to keep moving more in your resolutions, if you're into resolutions. There's a new wood waste and water substance created by scientists that works to be a sustainable disinfectant. And if you're dealing with menopause, you can ease the symptoms by listening to music. There's an article that looks at that. What else, Summers?
Let's see. What is the ideal sleep schedule for every sleep chronotype? There is a bio rover that is essentially driven by a Marimo ball. Can you guess the number of black holes in our universe? That's better than Wordle. And here's why sometimes doing nothing is the best thing you can do. So this weekend, take a break, do nothing, or get a fitness journal. Either is fine.
Well, I think, but putting yourself on the treadmill of having to write in a journal can also be negative. So sometimes doing nothing. I read an article yesterday or a newsletter talking about the cult of busyness and how destructive that's been for human thriving and even for productivity, you need to have downtime in order to really be productive, to be creative, to do our best. We need to have opportunities to just shut down and do nothing really.
Well, regardless of which you choose, whether it's to shut down and do nothing or to garden while listening to the Optimist Daily update, we want to thank you all for listening. Did I miss one?
No, I just wanted to ask you about Wordle. You're not doing it anymore?
Oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing Wordle. It just makes me mad. It took me, it took me every single try and I didn't get whack. I got black and crack and come on, whack? Really? That's just crazy. Anyway, that's all. Enough on my rants on Wordle. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Optimist Daily update today and this whole week and this whole month. We promise to continue to share positive solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world and ensure it is changed for the good. We promise to cover the current events with accuracy, legitimate sources, and offer you the information needed most to chart new paths for all of us. Now, Kristy, it's the end of the month.
I know, and we need some more emissaries to make our goals this month. And so if you're listening and you haven't already, please consider becoming an emissary on theoptimistdaily.com or gifting the gift of optimism by signing somebody else up for theoptimistdaily.com. And for starting at just $5 a month, you can help support reader-funded independent journalism and be part of the solution, changing consciousness that addresses our world's biggest challenges with a problem-solving mindset. Please help us keep the Optimist Daily free for everybody, supported by those of us who can.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday with more solutions.